Hey, what's up, everybody? It's CM here at the Common Sense Lifestyle and Perspective here. I wanted to give you a kind of a story of and point of view of things, and you know, can things change, right? So let's talk about Disney, all right? You know, Disney is something that everybody's grown upon, in general, and they went through some changes, let's just say, over the last few years. And it makes you just wonder why, and, can they bounce back? Can they recover? Can they be back to where they can be, right? So I've been kind of looking at stuff for the last few days and trying to figure out how do I want to approach this issue about Disney. And so I thought I'd look at it as this, right? Because obviously they're woke. They're one of the woke organizations, I guess you could say, company organization, in terms of what they are, what they're about, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to spread, and the message and all that. And obviously, anybody that's trying to, be so-called woke, all right, has it's gone bad, right? It's gotten bad in general. So let me see here. So Disneyland in general, right? Well, what we've known over the years. I've been to several Disneylands, right? I've been to Disneyland in L.A. several times. I've been to Disneyland in Japan. I've been to Disneyland in Hong Kong. So I've been to these Disneylands. Never been to Florida though for Walt, Disney World. Never been there. I think there's one in Paris. Never been there. It's never been in Europe. It says Australia proposal there. Looks like. Um, but yeah, so they lost their ways, right? Because you took classic stories, classic characters, and throughout the years have just continued to be what is the image of Disney, right? And then all of a sudden, I was trying to figure out when did it all start to change, right? The last time I've been to Disneyland was 2014, right? So 10 years ago. And even at that time, there wasn't any sort of push or ideas of any sort of um, wokeness agendas or anything like that. It's not even on the radar. All right, wasn't even on the radar. Uh, it's just your classic stuff, right? Classic stories, classic characters, and all that stuff. And then as that time went on between 2015, as it got closer to 2020, that's when things start to change, right? This whole idea of DEI, all right, diversity, equity, inclusion, and not just race, but gender and and different walks of just living life, right? Was starting to be incorporated just based on what I started to see into Disney, right? And then I think the idea of anybody that has a woke agenda is one, of course, you want to bring awareness, right? But they're shoving it down your throats, right? That's what the problem is. They're shoving down this whole DEI and wokeness down your throats and forcing it upon to be something that, you know, it just has to be something that you just have to be forced to accept is what they're trying to do with anybody that has like this woke agenda push like Disney has done so far, right? So they started to do things over time with Disney, right? They take classic stories, they've removed characters, they change characters, and even in classic stories of, say, like for example, comics when they took over comics of Marvel comics, right? Um, they started to do things to classic comic book stories. You look at characters they started introducing into some of these movies and all that as well. And it's like, why are they doing this? Like, why are they? essentially fucking things up. If you got something that's been good for so long, why do something to radically change things and force it down into acceptance of everybody? Because you know how it is, right? When you force people to do things, you tend to do the opposite, right? You want to do the opposite. You you're going to be pushed away rather than be accepting of it, and that's what Disney has done, right? So, for example, um, you can see the, to me, erosion of classic stories over time. For example, when they decided to, let's see here, uh, I guess we could go more present day, because, but you could just, things that they started removing over time in the Disneyland sphere of things, right? So, for example, let me just jump on over to here. I think it's a better way to tell it. Right, so they go woke, they introduce all these different characters, extreme woke shows and cartoons, things like that, right? And they started putting it into cartoons and all that, and it's like, why? And I just don't get it. I just don't get it. And so more of the recent things they started doing was, well, you know, they wanted to change Snow White, for example, right? They, instead of a classic Snow White, it's supposed to be as white as snow. Oh no, no, that's too racist, because you can't have white. So that's the thing. It's reverse racism, right? Anything that's for white is reverse racism now, right? Anything against a white race, anything that is anything that can be deemed as quote unquote offensive is it's just it's racist, So for example, Snow White, right? Supposed to be, the classic story is supposed to be white as snow, right? But they put a Latino character or whatever, and even the dwarves were so bad that, oh no, no, you can't have dwarves because it's just racist, it's biased, So they started introducing different, the concept, which was received so bad, was instead of having dwarves, I think they were introduced as like seven friends or some bullshit. And it's just funny how they try to twist even a story like that, into something, and then they try to force it out there. But luckily, people were, really unreceptive to that. They took a classic story like Little Mermaid, and we saw Little Mermaid, right? How can Little Mermaid turn all of a sudden dark skin and near black? Maybe she was adopted in the ocean. I don't know. It's just weird, right? Like all these weird things they try to do to these stories to screw things up. Like here, for example, I remember reading about this one in Buzz Lightyear movie, which is kind of a spin-off of Toy Story with Buzz Lightyear. They had like a gay character they introduced, and I guess there was like a kissing scene too that involved two males or something like that. And it's like, really, like why are you like trying to, I guess mainstream extreme stuff, right? And so, it makes you think, did they lose their ways, right? And then you can see in the Marvel movies, for example, right? Because I like watching the Marvel movies. I've read Marvel comics when I was a kid. And you could tell the evolution of killing off or spinning off the male characters into female lead characters, right? And you can see how well that went because, for example, Captain Marvel, right, was a male character in the comics, and in the Marvel in the Marvel movie universe, it's female, right? Even though in the comics they had Miss Marvel, which was supposed to be the counterpart of Captain Marvel. So it's like, how do you explain a Captain Marvel and a Miss Marvel in the current comics? Because of course these days they'll spin comics as multiverse, and so it's a different universe and all this other crap, which they didn't really. They had something like that, but they didn't really say it like that during that time in the comics. It was just a different. They never really connected those universes together. It was just a. They did have different universes, but they were just different. But they never connected them in a multiverse kind of way. But there was no way on the radar that they would have had a Captain Marvel, as a male or a female lead character in the comics. But back then they killed off Captain Marvel too, by the way. So it's just one of those things. And another classic Marvel character that they really changed up was Nick Fury, right? Which was Samuel L. Jackson. Nick Fury in the comics was a white guy, so you can see how anything that's a white person, they really kind of just pushed away and changed into something different, right? Whether it's a female or not white guy, not a white guy, which is kind of interesting, and they would do it to characters that they would look at as minor characters, right? Because you don't want to lose the whole audience, right? If you start making, for example, Iron Man like a Chinese guy, for example, you will lose everybody, right? He's a lead character. So, it's just stuff that they kind of deemed as, to me, accessory characters. That's when they started to kind of interchange people into it, right? Hulk is a notable character, so obviously he's a white person, right? If you decided to put, again, a dark-skinned Hispanic Hulk, nobody told me receptive to that because that's not Hulk, right? And things like that. So as time went on, I mean, when Disney started going down this direction, you couldn't really see at the very beginning as things were happening that people are not really receptive to it at all. And that's the problem. People are not receptive to it because you're forcing these views and ideologies down people's throats. And it's like, you turn classic things like, for example, this is images that made the headlines like a year or two ago, where you're at Disneyland and all of a sudden you have this greeter as you're walking into a store dressed up as one of the characters with a full-on mustache. There was another dude with a full-on beard, and it's like, what kind of bullshit, what kind of shit is this? You're selling dresses at a Disney store in Disneyland, but it's a dude, right? I mean, it's like, why would you want to do that? And then you're gonna have little kids look at it and like, you're making it sound okay to wear dresses. And I'm sorry, I'm a guy and I'm never gonna wear a dress. And you shouldn't be pushing this sort of thoughts and ideologies upon kids in their faces, all right? Because one, they're too young to decide for themselves who they are in terms of image. Two, it's not that it's bad to cross-dress and all that, because people mess around with clothes all the time. People play with dolls. If you're a guy, sometimes play with dolls because maybe you have a sister, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're trying to force it upon people, that's a whole different thing here, and it's not good, right? So, when you see shit like this, it's a bad look. It's just bad, and people are not going to be receptive to it. So what happens, right? People are not going to show up as much. People are not going to watch the movies as much. People are not going to watch the shows as much. And then after, and maybe a first couple years, you're not going to be able to see how it's a losing money venture. But as time goes on, as several years have gone on, right, now we're coming up upon 8, 9, 10 year window, right, of this direction. And how does that look now, right? You could look back and be like, damn. All right, so when you go back and look, you're like, wow, they've done a lot of shit over the years, and it's crazy because they even had a recent call, all right, where he says woke is over, but of course not. It's not over. You can't just. What I'm thinking is that maybe he is doing something we don't know about, right? Is Iger doing something that we don't know about? All right, is he something undercover, right? Since he's like pushing this whole agenda, right? And I mean, when you look at, they say here, the shareholders meetings and stuff that they've done, and you look at the board of advisors and stuff. I mean, money has been eroded. It's been going, they've been shooting money into the fire pit ever since. All right, so people, I think, are starting to wake up that maybe this is not the way to go. All right, enough is enough with, uh, why do all have, why do I have to have a Marvel that's all women, right? Things like that. I mean, yeah, nearly every lead character now, Black Panther, Iron Man, you could throw in She-Hulk, Captain Marvel. You throw it all out there, and it's all become female. Thor is the most recent one, and it's like, why? Classic stories. All of a sudden, all female leads. It's gonna drive people away because these sort of Marvel movies, which were kind of built on an audience of, I hate to say it, male, right? Because comics growing up is a male thing. And I know you're trying to open it up a little bit wide to introduce it to the, females that have really never delved into the comic world before by having female lead characters and all that. But you're taking away the established characters that were so established for years and years and years and throwing that away and just replacing it with females. And one, it's not going to go well because I would probably say men is a bigger audience than women in watching Marvel movies. And if you're going to just replace the classic characters in that way, well, you're going to see that you're not going to have a big female audience to watch it like you think you have. And so Disney needs to wake up, and maybe they're going to start waking up from this, right? Maybe this is a wake-up call finally. It took them, 8, 9, 10 years to figure it out, but that's an area that, they got to really look at, right? Enough is enough with pushing all. I mean, even the Star Wars shows that they've lost their ways as well, right? As they've gone woke and gone, to female leads as well, and they've took the classic story of Star Wars and really just, I mean, they've really, I don't even know what they did creatively. They just really like put it to something that lost me. Like, it's like, what's the point of these other Star Wars shows and stuff now? Like, it doesn't even seem to really matter. Like, what's the point of them? But yeah, I mean, enough is enough of the Disney stuff, and either Iger has to, some explaining to do on some change, or maybe they just need some new face in there to really turn things around that maybe can, stem back the old ways of things that people are and have been receptive to in the past and come back to, But, for example, can Disneyland turn things around, right? Is there any hope? Well, the hope is that, yes, there is a possibility they can do that because when you look at, for example, they recently acquired the rights to Deadpool, and Deadpool obviously, right? Deadpool is obviously a character that's un-Disneyan, all right? And the question was when they acquired the rights to Deadpool, because he is a Marvel character, but they had different rights to different characters because like in the early 2000s, Marvel licensed characters to Sony studio, Sony, I guess studios, and so at the time they had Spider-Man, they had X-Men, they had Deadpool, and several characters, right? And so part of the agreement was they couldn't be used in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's why you didn't see Deadpool in it. You didn't see X-Men in it, right? Spider-Man was an exception. They were able to cross-utilize Spider-Man. They had like a special agreement with Spider-Man. That's why you saw Spider-Man in the Avengers movies and all that, even though he was still licensed under Sony. But now, with all that, I think all the licensing with Sony is ended, and Marvel was able to reacquire or regain the rights to X-Men, the Deadpools, anything associated in their universe. So Wolverine obviously is in it, and that way, and Fantastic Four, that's another one. So that way now it's all be able to be connected back in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as they're supposed to be. Alright, so it's not a separate entity anymore. It's all united, and that's why, for example, Phase 5, and, in the upcoming years is going to be more about the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, the characters that weren't part of the cinematic universe before, for Marvel. Now Disney has control over and all that, and hopefully Disney doesn't screw things up. And so far, they've done it right. All right. So can Disney turn things around? Obviously, they see the potential of what they got, right? And obviously, they see that maybe going woke has got them to go in a broke direction because of all their movies, all their shows, everything that they've done irresponsibly lost them a lot of money. And maybe they're starting to wake up and feel like, all right, you know what? Maybe we should start to just try to do things the way it's intended to be and not force it, things down people's throats and all that stuff. And, if some people will eventually be open to these sort of things, then, you just let that be. Let society figure that out and not force society to accept it, because that's what usually happens, right, in society, is that society tends to accept things in time. But when you force it, it pushes people away. To me, it delays the process. So, in light of all that, Disney got a hit on their records finally, right? As Deadpool, Wolverine, crossed over $1 billion, right? And that shows you how, if you let things be the way it's supposed to be, they could have easily not let Deadpool be what Deadpool is, right? Character is violent, cussing, it's rated R. I mean, they actually let a rated R movie come through, which is shocking. But they could have changed his character, which would have taken the character away, essentially, of what the soul of this character is, right? Filthy, violent, everything about him, right? And then that would just, erode the character. Wolverine's Wolverine. They didn't touch the characters from what I felt. I felt like they didn't do anything in terms of touching these characters, which they shouldn't, because you would take away the very essence of those characters, and it would just drive people away. This wouldn't be a hit if people saw the change, right? People saw the change in the previews that, okay, you know what, not saw the change, saw the previews enough to be like, you know what, there was no change. Oh man, this is going to be good. And obviously they were good because, over $1 billion is now, and beyond is now. Let me see, I want to refresh this. Let's see what the number is. Alright, so I don't know what the current, because today is the 20th. So I don't know what the current number is right now. Let's see if I click on this, if it'll show the current revenue. Let's see here. Yeah, it's not giving me an official number right now, but it already crossed 1 billion 9 days ago, so that tells you something. All right. So can Disney again turn things around? Yeah. Maybe they're gonna wake up from being woke, for a change. So we'll see what happens there, and hopefully this will be things to come. All right. Maybe they should stop with the allowing the dudes to wear dresses, selling your kids dresses at Disneyland. Maybe they'll stop with all the forcing down our throats, and wake up finally. Because obviously, if you don't mess with something that's been good, look at what can come out of it, right? So let that be a lesson, right? Look at Target. Target woke up from being woke. When last year they had a lot of backlash with the types of stuff they had on display in front of the store. People didn't like that shit. So what happened this year? Rather than forcing every store to carry a woke line, what did Target do this year? Do you know what they did? Well, they made the stores optional. If you want to carry the woke line for the summer, and it's optional, and if so, well, it's in the back of the store. So at least there's more flexibility. They're not being forced, and this all can be a lesson that people are learning, right? That culturally, these things will be accepted. It just takes time and not being forced for us to accept. And maybe not all people will accept. That's just the way life is, right? For example, when you look at time, right? There used to be a time when, Asians and blacks, for example, weren't forced to be, they weren't accepted in mainstream American society because they were different, right? As time went on, and it's not 100%, obviously nothing's ever going to be 100%, but as time went on, they have been accepted, right? And again, it's not 100%, but it does show you that people will accept things over time. So let that be a wake-up call, all right? Can Disney wake up from being woke? Yeah, because this shows right here, right? Now the question is, can they keep this momentum, the swinging back of the pendulum in the other direction going? Or are they just going to continue down their woke ways and continue to be like this bearded dummy here and wear dresses and stuff? I guess only time will tell. But that's what I wanted to bring up to you guys today. They lost their ways, give or take 10 years ago. And it's never too late to start to wake up from being woke. And only time will tell if they're actually going to do that. And we'll see what happens. that's my take on things. Do you agree with me? Let me know what you think. Are you woke or are you waking up from being woke? Uh, I think this whole woke stuff is pretty lame to me, and you know, things will be accepted in time. You don't need to force it on us. All right. So it only pushes people the other way. All right, enough of me. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And comment down below. Subscribe to everything I got. And I'll see you in the next one.